It is now 6:30 p.m. I would like to call the Design Review Board meeting of November 7th, 2024 to order. Before I proceed, I would like to take a moment to go over our meeting protocols for today. The South Pasadena Design Review Board meeting will be conducted in person to maximize public safety while still maintaining transparency and public access. Members of the public can observe the meeting via Zoom. Will staff please take roll call?
Board Member Martin,
Present.
Board Member Hill,
Here.
Board Member Younger, excuse absence, Vice Chair Tsai,
Here.
Chair Nichols.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. All right, next we move on to the approval of the agenda. Board members, do you have any requests for additions, revisions to the agenda? If so, please raise your hand.
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no requests, I would like a vote of the board to proceed with the approval of the agenda as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Next is the disclosure by board members of site visits and ex parte contact for items on today's agenda. Board Member Martin?
I run by the second project regularly.
Board Member Hill?
No, none.
Board Member Younger is not here. Vice Chair Tsai?
I am the applicant for the second project on the agenda.
Okay, and myself, I have not had any either. Next is public comment for general items that are not on the agenda. Has staff received any public comment in person or via Zoom?
We have not received any public comments in chambers. Guests on Zoom, please click the hand icon to make a public comment for the items not on the agenda. And we do not have any public comments via Zoom.
Great, thank you. All right. Regarding the minutes, board members, does anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes? If none, we will move to approve the minutes as submitted.
None. No changes.
Okay. All right. So I guess I should say all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so the minutes are approved as submitted. Okay, so that brings us to the first project number DRX 24-0007. Does staff have a presentation?
Good evening, board members. We do.
Great.
All right. I'm Tatiana Marin, Acting Assistant Planner, and I will be presenting item number 3 on today's agenda, DRX 24-007, located at 278 Camino del Sol. Here is an aerial view of the subject site. The subject property is located to the northeast side of Camino del Sol and located in the Altos de Monterrey zone. The subject site is a rectangular shaped lot that measures a total of 8,435 square feet and is developed with an existing 2,660 square foot two-story single-family residence. Additionally, the property was developed with an attached garage measuring 451 square feet. The applicant is requesting a design review permit for a 548 square foot first floor addition, a 32 square foot second floor addition, and a 891 square foot basement. Additionally, the project scope includes an attached second story ADU, which is not part of the discretionary review being presented today. Here we have the existing site plan. And here we have the proposed site plan with the project scope highlighted in green. Now we have the existing first and second floor plan. Per project plans, 487 square feet of the existing first floor is proposed to be demolished. And now we have the proposed first floor and proposed second floor plan. Overall, the design will expand the living room, provide a new archway, and modify the first floor plan in other ways as shown in the project plans. Also, 32 square feet will be added to the second floor to create a stairwell and closet space. In addition to the proposed project, the applicant is proposing an attached ADU, as mentioned previously, highlighted in red, that is contributing to most of the increase in the second floor massing. As a reminder, ADUs are not subject to the review of this discretionary body, and wanted to note this since it's part of the overall project scope. And now we have the proposed basement floor plan. The basement will include room for storage, a bathroom, a sump pump room, and a light well. The light well is proposed to be in the side yard, which will not impact the front facade. And as a result, the dwelling will have a total of 4 bedrooms, a kitchen, a shared living room, and a dining room, 3.5 bathrooms, laundry room, and a basement. Now we move on to the existing and proposed roof plans. The proposed roof will continue the style of the existing roof and will match the existing gray tile roof on the primary structure. And now we move on to the existing and proposed elevations. Here we have the south front elevation. And as noted previously, the portion highlighted in red is the proposed attached ADU on the 2nd floor. The front elevation is to include a new front porch, new wood board siding, and stone veneer siding. The new windows are to match the existing window material in vinyl. And in addition, the existing chimney is proposed to be removed. Now we have the rear north elevations. And here we have the existing and proposed west side elevations. And lastly, we have the existing and proposed east side elevation. And as you can see, there are no substantial changes being made to this elevation. And lastly, we also have some colored renderings of the completed design. As proposed, the project complies to all applicable development standards for the AM zone, as well as the city's design guidelines. As mentioned in the staff report, the basement is considered habitable space. However, it does not count towards floor area ratio calculations due to FAR being calculated from exposed exterior wall to exterior wall. In this case, the basement is completely underground, therefore does not count towards floor area ratio calculations. With that being said, staff recommends that the board find the project exempt under CEQA guidelines, section 15301, class 1 for existing facilities. And class 1 includes additions under 10,000 square feet to existing structures. And that the design review board approve project number DRX 24-007, subject to the conditions of approval. And that concludes staff's presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, as well as the project applicant and architect are here as well. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for staff?
None for staff.
No.
Does the applicant have a presentation?
They do not.
Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
No.
Me neither. All right, so I will now open a public hearing. Staff, are there any public comments for this item?
We have not received a request for public comment in chambers. Attendees participating on Zoom, please click the hand icon to make a comment on item number 3. And we do not have any public comments via Zoom.
Thank you. Okay, so we will now close the public comments and have a discussion amongst the board. Would someone like to begin?
I do, and I realized I probably should have asked this question to either staff or most likely the applicant. I noticed the difference between the rendering and the elevation of the front elevation. So drawing A2 and the rendering itself, one is showing shutters, and I don't know if that's intentional or not. And I apologize, I should have asked this during the applicant question period.
Also looks like there was siding and
And that's removed. And so I just want to know what's the design direction?
Sir, can you go ahead and I'm sorry, can you go ahead and state your name and just go ahead and make sure you press a button? Thank you.
There we go, sorry. My name is Carlin Wong. I am the applicant. And sorry, we did decide to remove the shutters, so the rendering is up to date.
Okay,
I think we have an up-to-date plan, but it may not be the one that was grabbed for that slide.
I think we got email. Did we get email with the
No.
document
uh,
today?
it's, the memos are,
Or was it in here?
yeah, they're in the front pocket.
maybe I missed that.
That's,
Is that part? No?
No, okay,
that's not.
okay. Okay, well, thank you. I just wanted to understand which one was moving forward. I think the decision to, personally, I think the decision to remove the shutters was a wise one. It looks pretty,
tight.
it looks tight, exactly. So yeah, so it looks much nicer. So I think that's great. Okay. And then, I mean, overall, just general comments. I feel like this is a really simple, sleek design that is into the massing's integrated well. I did originally was gonna have a question about that window on the lowest level in the front closest to the street, because it's asymmetrical, but I noticed that's the existing condition, so that, you know, that is an existing condition, so I think that's okay.
I do like the larger windows.
Yeah,
It's slightly larger. I feel like that's more proportional to the facade,
yeah,
minus the shutter. And I do like the porch, the new porch entryway.
yeah,
I feel like that really adds character to the front of the elevation.
I agree. The only thing, and this to me is minor, is to the left of the entry, that window and how the datum, the lower sill of the window sits below the datum line of the stone to stucco transition. And so there's, I mean, it's minor and I don't think it's that big of a deal, but do you see the area that I'm talking about? I don't know if anybody else sees that and thinks that that's,
Yeah, I saw that. That was my only
Okay.
criticism, really.
okay.
Yeah, I
That would be it
tend
for
to
me.
agree with that too. Like,
For me, it's not a deal breaker. It's more just like reconsider that, maybe look at moving it up but I understand they're trying to get, it looks like it's a pretty steep driveway there, or I can't really tell from the rendering. And I'm not sure about if the site plan shows it, but it looks like it's pretty steep there, so they want to try to maximize the window height, which I understand, so they've dropped the sill, but they also want to get that stone, so it is a bit tight there to, if they were to, unless they were to reduce the size of the window.
I think it would improve it a lot if it
You think so?
aligned with the stone.
Yeah.
I think it's a minor thing that would make a really nice elevation even
Yeah.
better.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
What is the proposed garage door? Is it the existing garage door and it's just being repainted?
Yeah, I don't think there's plans to change the garage.
Okay, thank you.
I also like the entry to the ADU. I know we're not supposed to comment on the ADU itself, but because we see the staircase to it, I think it's integrated really well. Like it's on the side and the choice to actually put the entry, the staircase coming from the back of the house up kind of, I think was a great decision.
I don't have any further comments.
yeah.
Me
think
either.
it's pretty
I think
good.
it's pretty straightforward.
So, before I ask for a motion, are we kind of all in agreement that maybe that windowsill needs to kind of scooch up and line up at the bottom? I mean, with the
Yeah,
top of the
And then
stone?
update the drawings to remove the shutters.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make, I'll
Where's
make,
that
a-
end?
yeah. I'll make a motion to approve the project with the condition to remove the shutters and to raise the sill height of that window B on the first floor.
I'll second that motion.
Great. Will staff please take roll call?
Board Member Martin,
Aye.
Board Member Hill,
I,
Vice Chair Sai,
Yes.
and Chair Nichols.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Congratulations, this project has been approved, subject to the conditions of approval. This decision is final unless an appeal is filed within 15 days from today. No construction or activity may commence during this period. Appeal forms may be obtained from the city clerk's office. Thank you. This closes the public hearing for agenda item number 3. brings us to agenda item number 4. Does staff have a presentation?
I'd like to recuse myself as I am the applicant.
Okay. Good evening, Chair, members of the board, members of the public. My name is Dean Flores, Senior Planner with the Community Development Department, and I'll be presenting on item number 4, which is located at 516 Oriole Drive. Project number PLR 240008 and DRX 240012. So the subject property is located on the east side of Aurora Drive, north of Sterling Place, and is zoned in the residential estate or RE zone, which is a single-family zone for properties that are 10,000 square feet or higher. So the subject property is approximately 19,648 square feet in size. It's a rectangularly shaped lot, and it was originally built in 1954. The current house, as shown here, is approximately 3,927 square feet, and it's 2 stories. And as you can see here, it is a bit in disrepair, so the applicant is proposing a remodel along with the additions. As shown here, the project scope features first and second story additions. On the first floor, it's a very small addition towards the rear, 4 square feet, which is essentially just a new bay window at the rear of the home. 334 square foot second story addition. Project also includes the demolition of an existing detached garage and the construction of a new attached garage located in front of the home. Project also includes new roofing materials, switching from asphalt shingles to standing seam metal roof. And it also includes the reconfiguration of the existing pool. And lastly, it includes construction of an attached trellis-covered patio at the rear of the home. This shows the existing site plan. Again, the existing home and the existing pool towards the rear of the property, and the existing detached garage is located on the southerly portion of the property. The proposed site plan here, again, shows the location of the project scope, garage towards the front, second story addition towards the middle and the rear of the home, the location of the proposed trellis cover, the pool reconfiguration, and also just for reference, they are proposing a new detached ADU, but again, that's not under the scope of work that the design review board will be reviewing. That'll be reviewed separately under a separate permit. So this slide shows the proposed first and second story floor plans. Can't really see, but on the first floor, the bay windows towards the rear, the bay window addition. And on the second floor, they're expanding the second floor for the purpose of adding an additional bedroom and expanding some of the existing bedrooms for a total of 5 bedrooms after the work is complete. Here's the existing and proposed roof plans. Again, they're transitioning from asphalt shingles to standing seam metal roof. They're also adding some new skylights. And you can't really see from here, but as you can see from here, they're going to be removing the existing chimney, and they won't replace the chimney. So these next few slides show the existing proposed elevations as part of the proposed scope of work. Again, they're going to remodel the exterior as well. One of the main things as part of the front elevation, they're going to be removing the existing wood siding and replacing it with cement fiber siding, new windows and doors throughout, and the standing seam metal roof. This one shows the rear elevation. There's an existing balcony that will also be removed as part of the proposed additions, and also shows the new attached trellis cover. This is the north side elevation and the south side elevation. With respect to the development standards for the RE zone, the applicant has shown compliance with the applicable development standards, including lot coverage, FAR, building height, and setbacks. The only exception is the placement of the proposed garage, which they have submitted a reasonable accommodation request for the placement of the garage. In the RE and the RS single-family zones, our development code requires that a proposed attached garage be located at least 10 feet behind the front facade of the home. And as you can see, the applicant is proposing the garage in front of the home, which does not comply with code requirements through this reasonable accommodation request. So for a reasonable accommodation request, this is a discretionary request that's for persons with disabilities as part of ADA requirements for state and federal law. And it's also stipulated in section 36.410 of the South Pasadena Municipal Code. In order for the city to comply with state and federal fair housing laws, to provide reasonable accommodation to disabled persons in the application of its zoning and land use regulations, policies, and practices for persons with disabilities seeking fair access to housing. As such, these types of requests may include a modification or exception to the rules or standards for development to eliminate any applicable regulatory barriers to persons with disabilities. So as part of that application packet, I believe it's attachment 4 for the reasonable accommodation request. The applicant has shown that one of the residents is wheelchair bound and therefore qualifies for a reasonable accommodation request. However, upon review of the request itself and the proposal in its entirety, staff has determined that the proposed construction of the attached garage in front of the home does not meet some of the required findings for reasonable accommodation. More specifically, it doesn't comply with the second or fourth required findings. For the second finding, it states that the requested accommodation is necessary to provide one or more individuals with a disability an equal opportunity to use and enjoy a dwelling. So staff's determination is that the use of a garage as covered parking is not necessary to provide individuals with a disability an equal opportunity to use and enjoy the dwelling of the location that's been proposed. Staff has gone over some alternatives that the applicant can use. Some of them being, so as part of the development standard requirement for an attached garage being located in the front, it only doesn't allow a garage to be located in front of the house. It doesn't say anything about a carport not being allowed. So that's one of the alternatives that they can pursue. Instead of a fully enclosed garage, they can propose a carport in front of the home. Another alternative is to either maintain their existing garage or relocate the garage at the rear of the home, attached or detached, it's up to them. Another alternative is to have an uncovered parking area in front of the home. It could just be additional paving that is located in front of the home. Doesn't necessarily lead to a designated parking space as long as they maintain their existing garage as is. As far as the additional finding, it's finding number 4. The requested accommodation will not result in a fundamental alteration in the nature of a city program or law, including but not limited to the general plan, zoning code, design guidelines, or any specific plans. And again, with this proposed request, it's requesting to alter the requirements of the zoning code as it pertains to the placement of the required covered parking. So as stated before, there's other alternatives that they can pursue without violating the code requirements. And there's possibly any other alternatives that the applicant present, which staff could review as well. These are just the ones that we've highlighted that they can pursue instead of the proposal. With that said, the staff recommends that the Design Review Board find the project exempt under CEQA Guidelines Section 15301, Class 1 for existing facilities, deny the reasonable accommodation as proposed for the placement of the attached garage in front of the home, approve design review number PLR 24008 and DRX 240012, excluding the garage placement, subject to the conditions of approval, and recommend a chair review to review the proposed redesign, any redesign proposal for the required covered parking area, subject to the alternatives that staff has already presented. That concludes staff's presentation. Staff is available for any questions. I believe the applicant has a presentation as well. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for staff?
I do. I don't know if it makes more sense for the applicant to, I know normally that the order is we ask for staff, but a lot of my questions are going to get into the reasonable accommodation and the ADA requirements. And so that could be extensive. So I don't know if we want to have the applicant present, because that may answer some of the questions. Is that okay that we do that?
Sure.
And then I can ask staff questions after the applicant's presentation. So I'd prefer to wait to ask my questions to staff. Okay, thank you.
All right, so assuming there aren't any other questions for staff at this minute, let's go ahead and do the applicant's presentation.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Tsai, as you know. I'm the applicant for this project at 516 Aurora Drive. So this project started because this home has actually been my client's home for many decades, actually. She grew up in this house. Her dad still lives in this house as well and has invited her to move back into this house. And the plan is to be a multi-generational home for everyone, including her sister and her two kids. So there will be quite a number of people living in this house. And as Dean has stated, it's in a state that is needs extensive repair. So the goal for this house is to remodel and add any additional space required for this multi-generational family. And some of the family members have some accessibility needs. And I'm not going to go through the design, but I'm just going to go through why we decided to have the garage at the front. Okay, so next. So I wanted to talk about the site plan a little bit. The approach of the driveway towards the house is sloped. And when you actually get to the house, the driveway is non-conforming. We only have 9'1" clearance. And in the South Pasadena zoning code, a standard driveway is 8 feet plus 2 feet on both sides, which is 12 feet. So we don't conform to the driveway. Plus there is a gate at the driveway, so that actually makes that less than 9'1". Have the next slide. So here's a photo showing the slope of the driveway, and you could see that wood is not ADA compliant. Can you go to the next slide? And here's a photo of the driveway at the side of the house where it's 9'1". But as you can see with the gate and the opener, it is less than 9'1". Next slide. This is a model of the handicap van that the owner would like to purchase to use for the family. And next slide. And you can see these are the dimensions of the van. So the width with the mirrors is 8.11 feet. That gives them a pretty difficult challenge to drive through that driveway every day, coming in and out. And it's a pretty long driveway between the house and the wall. Next slide. So 2 houses down, so this is 516, 2 doors down at 500 Aurora Drive. There's another house that has an attached garage in the same configuration as the one we are proposing. And next slide. So here's a aerial showing where that existing garage is at 500 Aurora Drive. These measurements are taken off Google Maps. So it's approximately from Google Maps 47 feet, and we have about 40 feet. So it's very close in relation to where the existing neighbor's attached garage is. And then, so that really concludes my presentation. The clients has chosen that they want an enclosed garage for safety. You know, they'll be assisting family members while handling young children. They want to store accessible equipment in the garage. A carport wouldn't allow this type of security and safety. So they really feel like the garage is what will suit their needs. A carport wouldn't. And also a garage in the rear will definitely not be able to accommodate what they need. So thank you.
Okay, so I guess, does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
I-
Sorry.
Oh, thank you. I had a question about the grading strategy for the site and the new garage, because it looks like there's a significant elevation difference between the finished floor level and the driveway approach. So is there going to be a retaining wall under the garage, or are you going to regrade the site to meet the bottom of the garage? What's the idea?
So towards the house, it's relatively flat. It's really sloped, really the first, so it's about 40, it's more than, so it's 40 feet to the garage, but between the garage and the house, it's relatively flat where that is. So there will be some grading, and I don't think we need a retaining wall. It's not more than 3 feet in terms of elevation where the garage is proposed to be. But we'll have a slab foundation right there.
Okay.
Did you? have a
Oh,
question?
I can, just because we're getting into the accessibility aspect of it, kind of understanding the positioning of the garage and having it at the front of the house, and kind of the inner relationships of the program spaces within the house and how it relates to the garage. So it seems like the current layout, the garage is at the back of the house, is that correct?
Yes.
And so is it connected? Can you go through the house to the back of the garage? Or is it currently you have to go around exterior of the house and get into the garage? Is there a connection?
You can go through the back, but I think there's like a raised patio, and it's not flat. It's, the patio's been
Okay.
disrepaired.
So it makes it difficult to go from the interior space. There's not an accessible route from the interior space to the garage
Not
itself.
currently,
Not
yeah.
currently.
'Cause the
Okay.
Current garage is attached,
Yes,
right?
it's attached.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
freestanding structure.
It's a freestanding
Yeah,
structure.
and it's not easy to get from the house to the garage right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
understood. All right, thank you. That was my only question.
Okay, so I guess I'll now open to public hearing. Staff, are there any public comments for this item?
We have received 3 public comments in chambers. I have 3. The first person, when you come in, when you come to the podium, you'll have 3 minutes. I have Melvin Cum come to the podium. There's a little button that you can press right there. There's a button for this, for the microphone.
Hello, my name is Melvin Coombe, and this has been a house that the families have lived there for the 32 years. My wife had a brain injury back in 2021 and required a couple of brain surgeries. Totally unexpected, but it left her pretty much in a wheelchair. She could not walk on her own. During the day, she was either in her wheelchair or her bed. Okay. This drastic change in lifestyle showed the difficulty in living in a house that was designed and built in the 50s. Okay. Her standard wheelchair cannot go through the bathroom door. So most of the time she transfers to a smaller transport chair. So a transport chair has little wheels in front and back, so she can't push herself around. I have to push her in and out. The other option is if we remove the door, but that's a common bathroom, the one that she can access. We did buy a minivan that made transportation for her and her various wheelchairs a little easier. But over the last year and a half, her strength and mobility was getting weaker. That's why I knew I would have to plan for a full-size van that would either have an electric or hydraulic lift in the future. I think Melissa went through the dimensions. Getting in and out to the back of the house through that side driveway in a minivan is already kind of challenging. You know, I've already scraped the side mirrors a couple of times already. And this is in a minivan. With a full-size van that I was planning for, probably going to be near impossible to maneuver to the back garage all the time. Okay. So that's the main reasoning for having a garage built and attached, not detached, but attached to the house. We can have a internal ramp in the garage, so it will be a little bit easier. We could have the slope a little bit more gentle, so it'll just be easier to transport in and out. So, you know, for the past couple of years, it was easier actually for me to park the car in front of the house to get her in and out through the front door. But this past year with the really heavy rains, you know, my wife would have therapy outside of the house for about 4 or 5 times a week. But with the rains, oops, I'm sorry. Can I continue just for a minute? Okay.
Yeah.
But for the rains, sometimes we would have to sit outside, maybe 10, 15 minutes. Several times it was up to 45 minutes, almost an hour for the rain to let up enough so I can get her out of the car, into her wheelchair, and then into the house. So it really showed that the design of the house is, we just need to do something different so it's as least restrictive as possible. My daughter, Katie, has, and she'll come up and say a little bit, but she does have physical and anatomic disabilities, okay? She was born with fused joints of her hands and feet. It wasn't webbing, it was actually fused. She's gone through surgeries to at least separate her fingers so she can function. But she doesn't have full mobility of her joints. And that's the same with her feet. Her feet, we only did one surgery just to separate the big toe. We were told by the pediatric orthopedic surgeon years ago that that she is going to be prone for moderate to severe arthritis later on in life, where walking may be difficult and she may be wheelchair bound. So these are all considerations for this house. Like I said, we've been there for 32 years. We love the area. I plan to stay there. And plan to make it a generational house. That's how I grew up, with grandparents in the house, my parents and us kids. Uh, uh, as kids, we were able to help my grandparents around in their old age. I'm pushing 70. So that's the plans. Okay. All right. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Catherine Coombe.
Hi, my name is Catherine Coombe. I live at the Royal House with my dad. I have a disability in my hands and my feet. I would like to have the garage attached to the house. I sometimes have difficulties and pain when I'm walking up and down the stairs. An attached garage that has a ramp to enter the house will be helpful to me and safer for me when I come home. Also, I am driving on my own and I would like to be able to put my car in the garage for safety, exit the car when the garage is closed. Thank you.
And our third speaker is Bethany Coombe.
I have to push it? Oh, no. Oh, okay. Hello, board members. Thank you so much. I know the letters of support. I didn't realize some friends of ours forgot the addresses and I did turn it in on time to Dean. So I have a copy just in case for proof to show that they're all residents of South Pasadena. We've been very blessed that we have about 21 letters of support from our friends and families. But I just want to share that, as on-time residents of South Pasadena, we are deeply committed to our community. And we want to assure you that our plans will not have a negative impact on the city or its neighbors. On the contrary, we believe our project will bring a positive and uplifting contribution to the area, as you can tell, it needs a lot of change, and enhancing the neighborhood's charm and reflecting the values of South Pasadena. Our family has really deep roots in the city. It's not just us who live here, and me and my husband who decided to buy a condo here as well to be in this beautiful city, but my whole dad's family, all of his siblings, his mother, we all live in South Pasadena, and we grew up together with my cousins in this area. And it's such a wonderful city that even my mother-in-law recently, just this week, went into escrow to buy a commercial property for me and my husband to move our business here to South Pasadena so we could help take care of the residents with what we do. So we chose to make this city our home because of its strong sense of support, family, and community values we know all of us here hold dear. We hope the board can see our deep connection to South Pasadena and recognize that approving our designs will not only be beneficial to my family, my kids, generations, but will also serve it will also serve to strengthen the fabric of this wonderful city. Helping one of our own, as we believe we are, would be life-changing for my family, helping them with our unique needs to live an easier, fulfilled life. We are committed and wholeheartedly will ensure that this project aligns with the city's vision for growth and community well-being. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. Guys, I just leave it right here.
And we do not have any more public comments in chambers. Guests on participating on Zoom, please click the hand icon to make a public comment on item number 4. And we do not have any comments via Zoom.
Great, thank you. Okay, so before we go to our discussion, did you have any questions to go back to?
City staff,
Yeah.
yes, please. Can we go back specifically to the slide that talked about the city's findings and why they felt that reasonable accommodations would not, the two, I think it was B and D, would not adhere? And I wanted to know where that source is coming from and if the city attorney has reviewed this. I just want to kind of understand the interpretation of the reasonable accommodations. And I think the findings, it might be one page before, after? This one, required findings, B and D. So those are the two that you said that you felt that it did not comply and therefore the request for reasonable accommodations don't apply in this case. And so my question is, where was this coming from, this information?
So these are required findings in the South Pasadena Municipal Code for reasonable accommodation requests.
But not the federal, not the FHA.
No, so what we have in
Okay.
our code is codified through state and federal legislation.
Okay. And it complies, we're sure with that. This has been run by the
So-
city attorney?
Yes, so we did consult with city attorney for this project. Yes.
Okay. I just want to clarify, I don't know if this matters in this case. I'm CASP certified, so I'm a certified access specialist, and I know single-family home is a bit different. FHA still applies to single-family homes. It's, there's certain requirements, so a lot of this stuff, I want to get into the details of it. I don't know if it's the appropriate forum to do that here, because I know we're doing a design review, but the fact that this is being brought to us, I don't know if we get into that accessibility requirements and we go that far.
So because the only discretionary permit for this application is before the design review board, that is why the reasonable accommodation was brought to you for this decision, which would be made normally at staff level if it were a staff level approval. I'm not sure what you're referring to in terms of FHA, but I would say that the requirement here, because it is codified in South Pasadena's code, is to make the findings per the code of South Pasadena. And just one more thing you're asking, well, how did we get to how
Yeah.
did this conclusion, how was that reached? And so I would say that it's, and the rest of the project, as you know, we've recommended. So it's not a problem overall, the design of this house. It's very lovely. Normally, based on the code, having this garage in this location is not permitted. It's not permitted in the code. It is not per the standards of the code. The other location that the applicant showed, which is, I guess, 2 doors down, that might have been, I'm assuming that it was built in an era where the code allowed those garages. At some point, there was a decision to change the code, and the code says, no, you can't put those there. So reasonable accommodations typically are things like allowing a ramp and railings to go into a front yard setback where normally it wouldn't be allowed, for reasons like that, or covering too much of the area with pavement, for instance. If you have a landscape, ratio and you're going to cover it with more pavement in order to make it more accessible. Those are the sorts of things that reasonable accommodations typically are. They are not typically the building of a structure of this size, a full garage structure in an area where it's normally not allowed. So if that were in fact the only solution to enjoy the dwelling and have an equal opportunity to enjoy the dwelling, then that might be a reason to approve it. If there are other options that are less inconsistent with the code, then that's where that would go. So that's the idea behind reasonable accommodation.
I do understand that. I think I'm concerned, actually, D doesn't seem like it meets with the federal law. So and this is where the legal aspect of it, I think the city attorney needs to look into this and really confirm, because I'm pretty sure that federal law and accommodations for disabilities trumps any zoning code. And so I could be wrong, but I think it's really important because potentially you could have a lawsuit on your hands because you're not making accommodations for a person with a disability. I understand this is a single-family home, so it's a bit different, but a lot of the requirements, like the van requirements, for instance, normally you have to have 9 feet, and then there's supposed to be an access aisle that's at least 8 feet next to it. So these are minimum requirements. So I understand we're talking about a drive aisle that's next to the house, but it doesn't even meet the 9-foot minimum. So we're asking them to put a garage in the back that doesn't even the minimum of the current code requirements for accessibility standards. So it's stuff like that sorry, it's stuff like that that is concerns me because hearing the youth, so basically the ADA and so the FHA was actually enacted in 1986, right? And that's when the design and construction standards were put into play. This house was designed prior to that. It sounded like it was the 1950s. So obviously these standards weren't considered and it is a single family home. However, I think we need to really consider the use of the house because the accessibility requirements, both at a federal level and at the state level under the CBC, those accessibility requirements are based on use, program use, how it's used. And it sounds like the use of the house and how they'd be using it, putting the garage at the back is actually going to be difficult or create more challenges for the residents of the house with specific disabilities and how they're using it. So that's why I was asking, okay, what's the existing condition with the garage at the back of the house? Can you access it from within the house and go directly to there, or is there an accessible route? Also to clarify, the slopes within, this is why I said I don't want to get too technical, but I'm very familiar with the requirements of accessibility. And so slopes, 5% maximum. And so anything that goes over 5%, like I don't know enough about the slopes in the back, we weren't given that information here. So if that's beyond that, not accessible. So all of these things need to be taken into account. I think before we say, oh, the zoning code says that just because we don't like the look of a garage in the front of the house anymore, we're going to therefore, and I hate to use this word, but in some, it's true, we're going to therefore discriminate against the way these individuals, these persons with a specific disability are using their house, their property. And so that's my concern here. And again, I think this is a bigger topic. I actually would recommend that this wasn't brought in front of the design review board and that this was discussed outside with the attorney, because some of this actually doesn't look like it's legal at a federal level, but I don't know, and I don't want to
So-
overstep.
Right, so again, our city attorney did review this, and
Are they CASP certified? They do. That's the thing. You usually need to have an attorney who understands the accessibility requirements. And so
Well,
they've
do
consulted?
understand.
Okay, they
I don't
do.
know about that certification you're
Okay.
mentioning, but they do definitely understand these requirements.
Okay.
I don't, so the garage, there is a garage. There is a legal garage for this this house right now, right? It's in the back, it's there. And nobody is saying that they need to take that down and build a different garage in that location. However, if they leave the garage as it is, it complies with code in terms of two covered spaces. So they can have a different arrangement in the front that does not involve building a garage, and they can park there, and they can, have parking in the front and leave that parking in the back and use it maybe for, if they want to use it, not use it if they don't want to use it, but it meets the requirement. So there is a possibility for reasonable accommodation in the front of this house that's not a garage. And I think that's what we were getting at, that would be more in line with what these findings are, what the findings are.
And I understand that we're trying to make sure that we're complying with the zoning code, which is also law. But I guess what I'm understanding is there isn't an accessible route from the interior program use spaces to the current garage. So they would have to create an accessible route, whether it's putting a ramp, whether it's whatever that is. So you're asking for them to do that. And I don't know what that would look like. We're not, without seeing the plans and everything, without understanding it. So we're asking for them to use it in a different way, essentially. But I still don't see how that solves the issue of a van accessing on the side of that house. Like, how do you get that van through there?
It would be in the front. It would have
So-
to be in the
So then you're-
that's just one alternative. Another alternative, there's two different alternatives in the front, either a carport or just maintaining the existing garage and just having additional paving in the front without a structure.
So how is that covered, though, in the event that there's a weather event or there's a storm, and you have someone in a wheelchair, especially if it's an electric wheelchair, what's the accessible path and the route that they would take then? I mean, this has to be thought through, and I think that's why I'm a little concerned that this was brought to us without all of this being really kind of studied and looked at and saying, here is the possible accessible route, and here's the possible accessible design that complies with both the zoning code and meets the the person with a disability, their needs, and the way that they use the space. And because that's the intent of the FHA, the ADA, the design and construction standards.
Well, the carport alternative would be could be in the same location as where the garage is shown and have the same path of travel. So that, maybe that answers that question. The idea of having nothing in front or having, having an accessible access from a driveway that just goes in front of the front door. And then that would also work for an accessible van. But that would be up to the applicant. So
Yes, sir.
what you could do if you wanted is you could continue this hearing and ask them to come up with other alternatives that would be less inconsistent with the code and yet meet their needs. And typically that's how reasonable accommodations are resolved.
I'm curious though, especially seeing the fact that another house, a few houses down, has this condition, and I understand that that could have been under a different zoning code, that can be considered discriminatory because there's another house that has, so I'm just saying you could potentially open up for lawsuits. So it's a question for the city that it would be great if the city attorney were here so we could have these discussions with him or her.
That's something that similar to, they said the same thing, that it may have been allowed previously, but now no longer is. So it's a moot
Right.
point. But I don't want to speak for the attorney, but
Right.
those are the discussions we did have already.
Typically when a structure is built according to code and then the code changes, structures built after that code change can't build how it was previous to the code change, and that happens all over the place, right? That would be a non-conforming use.
Yeah, sorry.
So some of the solutions are one could ask for a variance, or one could ask for, go through a process and say, this code is not good, we should change it. And if the code changed and everybody was allowed to build a garage like this, then that would be according to code. But what we need to deal with and remember is that we apply the code, to equally to everybody. When somebody asks for reasonable accommodation, we work with them to see how can we make adjustments to the code, or not adjustments to the code, but how can we let you do what you like to do in order to have that accommodation that you need, and we can waive code requirements for that. I think we felt that waiving the code requirements for a full garage seemed excessive, considering that there were other solutions.
Was HCD or the U.S. Access Board or any other entity that creates these codes as the author, were they contacted and to get their input in this particular case? Okay, I highly recommend that that's done. The U.S. Access Board, really easy to discuss this with them and ask them in this case, and the same thing with HCD, which they're responsible for the housing side of accessibility requirements. I do understand that this is a single family lot, so it is a bit different in this case, but I do think it's something that should be further explored, especially if this becomes, we do have an aging population. This is one case that we're seeing. There may be more of these situations in the future to make sure that we are considering accessibility and people with various disabilities, and we are accommodating that in our zoning code. So this actually does seem like it's a concern for me, where the zoning code says, okay, we don't like the look of a garage in front of the house. I'm not sure the reasoning. My guess is we don't like the look of a garage in front of the house, but unfortunately that makes it more difficult for individuals with specific disabilities. And so we really need to be considering that, just beyond we don't like the aesthetic look. So I'm not sure how to move forward in this if we continue it. And again, I feel like I've gone beyond my purview here on the design review board, but just because this is I am an expert in this, therefore I feel that I had to comment and discuss it
Like,
in this public forum.
Can I also add a comment? So when we started this project, we had a different community development director, and I had also a different planner, and there was apparently a different city attorney, and all three of them were on the same page to allow this garage in the front to be approved through a reasonable accommodation. And that's why we went through this design and developed it to this point to present to the design review board. And a variance was also offered to us as an option, but we were advised that the reasonable accommodation was acceptable and
Okay.
which was a better option for us. And that's why we went forward with it.
Yeah. In my experience, this seems like a case of a reasonable accommodation, and this seems applicable. But again, I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to speak beyond. That's not my expertise. My expertise is I'm a CASP, I'm a certified access specialist for design and construction of projects, making sure they are complying with the code, including the FHA, the CBC, and there's a lot of other codes too, but those are just a few. And so I think, to me, it seems like it's a reasonable accommodation, but the city attorney needs to, I guess, weigh in on that. And if that's not the city's point of view now, the staff, then I'm not sure what the next steps would be.
Well, I
So,
guess the question.
I also have
would-
one more question. So can the board approve the reasonable accommodation as presented, even without the staff support today?
That was my question.
Oh.
Staff presents them the information and our analysis, and the board makes decisions.
So I think we should have our discussion.
Okay.
And then, because it may be a moot point. Because
Mhm.
if we all have a thought and we agree, you might not have to have some of those other discussions. Because personally, I have some issues with the windows and some other articulation on the
Okay.
garage,
Okay.
but I actually don't mind the garage.
Yeah.
But I would love to hear from the two of you.
Okay.
about Just as far as
Yeah.
outside of these. other
Outside, I
issues,
know, sorry. That's why I said it was going to take a long time. I
Architecturally,
apologize.
like what you guys feel about having that addition on the front of the garage.
Architecturally, I feel like I don't have enough information to make a discretionary decision
Mhm.
one way or the other. I mean, generally, I don't have a big problem with the design. I just feel like I don't feel prepared to make a decision whether a carport might be more appropriate or an enclosed garage, or what the overall impact of the garage on the street, like as if it were a non-conforming setback, like could there be like a setback study of the street that's looking at average setbacks? Like there's other mechanisms that we can use to evaluate the impact on the neighborhood and on, however the neighbors might feel on what I think is a reasonable accommodation, but not everyone's going to be intimately aware of the details of this accommodation. And, beyond this forum, there's not necessarily a way of communicating that with those people, with the rest of the community. So I
did
think,
notice one letter was from the next door neighbor.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was really impressed with all the letters. I'm
Mhm.
sure they're from people in the neighborhood, so I don't object to that.
Yeah.
Like I think that's wonderful. I just think even from a design perspective, I don't really feel like I'm in a position to make an approval either way. So that's my position.
Yeah.
I also have like minor architectural comments like with the windows and roof lines and stuff, which we can talk about. So
I'll just say, because like when you put out two options of carport with vehicles sitting underneath it, just out in the open, and a garage where all that's hidden. My first thought is, even though the carport is
Code compliant?
code compliant, it's potentially going to be like a worse solution aesthetically than
Yes.
an actual garage, because I mean, it's like when you put balconies on an apartment building, people end up using it for storage and there's just stuff sitting out there. So that's my first reaction to, okay, well, the code compliant version would be a carport, but I think that ultimately that might be a less aesthetic solution. I do have I feel like it's too big of a solid box, like it needs more windows, like some things about it architecturally that I feel need some refinement. But like the actual addition itself with all of the sort of the background information that we've been given, it doesn't, I would be leaning towards modifying it sort of architecturally with some windows and stuff
Okay.
and being okay with it. But I'm curious what your point of view is.
I mean, I agree. I think first comes functionality of the person with a disability and how that works. And so if this is the best location use for that disability, then I think that comes first. And if that's a garage in the front of the house, whether it's a carport or whether it's the garage, then I think that needs to be considered. I agree with the carport comment. You know, we're not only just talking about, okay, we're going to park a car there. Well, there may be other devices, wheelchairs, other, I don't know, all of the devices that are necessary in this specific disability case, but they may be stored in that location. So are we asking them to store it inside the house and they bring it outside every time? We don't know. Like there's, you know, there's transfer devices, there's other things that needs to be considered. So I think all of that needs to be considered in this case. Then in terms of the design, I don't mind it. I think the design is actually overall, I think the design, the massing is really clean. I actually like the monochromatic, you know, I love the standing seam roof. I think that's really gorgeous. I think the articulation, the fenestration of the windows is done well. I do agree that that front facade and that garage itself, maybe we want to look at the windows. There's that one window in that small awning, right? So it does seem a bit not out of place, but it just seems like it's one small window there. So I do agree that maybe we want to look at that facade and what the design is for that. But I do not have an issue with the garage being located in the front.
So it seems like we have kind of a, like we don't have like we're not necessarily in agreement to sort of approve this tonight. So I don't know, it's kind of the first time we've kind of come into this
Yeah.
situation. So
I don't know.
I'm not quite sure what our appropriate next step is.
So you do have a few options in the staff report. Page 13 provides alternatives to consider as far as a decision on this project tonight. Instead of staff recommendation, you have the option to approve as is. If you did want to proceed with approval of the reasonable accommodation request, the board would have to provide findings for us to do so. Another option is to continue the project or deny the project. So it's really up to the board what they want to do. Just another thing to consider is because there's only 3 board members present for this item, an approval would have to be unanimous at this point.
Mhm.
So again, it's up to the board, but you do have the option to continue based on the design comments you just made, based on the reasonable accommodation concerns. It's up to the board.
So I don't think we're unanimous right now. So I think we would, we'd have to continue, I guess.
I guess so.
So do we?
But
Oh,
the question
go
is
ahead.
to make it most productive. If we're continuing the item, what are we doing from now till the next
what
time
I was-
that we're going to be? Like, is this getting, understanding the really legal ramifications of this? And then also thinking about, you know, seeing additional studies that says, okay, we're not putting it in the back of the, we're no longer putting the garage in the front. We have other alternatives that we're looking at that works for both the person with disability as well as the zoning code.
Yeah.
And so I just don't know if it, like, I'm trying to make it productive, right? As opposed to say we
I don't
continue
think
it.
we need to do too much. I just
Yeah.
think we would need to do like one step of due diligence
Yeah,
just to make sure that we've studied and
yeah,
that we've presented the options and that those go into the record
yeah,
and that then we have the appropriate information to make a decision that benefits the whole community. And
yeah,
I'm sure we will. And so to me, it would just be like a site plan comparing the garage
Yeah.
as proposed to a carport.
yeah,
Like what would be the carport option? Like that's a simple drawing.
yeah,
And then maybe also like a setback study that's showing like, you know, kind of like a non-conforming setback condition, like however you would typically do that. That might be useful as well, just to have in the record. Uh-huh.
I think we should also, if we are going to continue this, we should also go ahead and finish a conversation about any other architectural
I agree.
comments that we might
Yes.
have, that way that it's kind of all.
I
wrapped in.
100% agree with it. That's, yeah, I think that's really important to do. Yeah. So regardless of the garage, because we can discuss that, I think, right? Just kind of the overall design. I really appreciated that there's the two materials on the facade. We've got the fiber cement, and then we've got the stucco, I believe. And so it kind of gives it, because it's all monochromatic, so at least the difference in the texture, I think, gives it some, on the front facade there, I think it gives it some additional depth and character. I don't know how everybody felt about that, the materials
Yeah.
on the facade. Oh, whoops. I think it shows it on that. Where's the elevation?
What was your comment about the materials?
I like how, it shows, I think like an A3, for instance, and I think it shows on a lot of the elevations. You can see to the left-hand side, so detail 1, it's showing the proposed north elevation, and it is showing that you have the horizontal fiber cement siding, and then to the right-hand side, it's almost a division of, you have that stucco. You have the finish, I think it calls it up here as, it just says stucco finish. But I just appreciate that variation in the materials because it's all monochromatic. Does that make sense, how I'm describing it?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I think that's fine.
I think the two comments I wanted to make were mainly about windows.
Mhm.
And it was what you said earlier, and it goes back to the garage. It's that the front elevation of the garage. I feel like if that window was bigger, or like it sort of, you had more window or more something going on that little front facade, that I think it would help that garage piece feel less garagey.
Mhm.
Not that that's a word. And then also the sort of the long side of the garage that's coplanar with the rest of the house.
Mhm.
It's just a really long blank wall, and I actually don't know how well you can even see that side from anywhere. Because I now that I've seen the photos of the house, I know which house this is.
Yeah, me too.
Because I drive by there every morning actually, but I don't know if you can see that facade. But part of me wants to like break the plane of the garage and that sidewall, just so
Yeah.
that there's a little, and maybe add some windows on that
Yeah.
that protruding piece of a garage.
I like that
Something
breaking the
like that,
plane
yeah.
too. That could just add to it a little bit. I don't know if there's a setback issue there, but
Yeah,
that's the only thing that could be, but you can make it at least visually look like it's almost like a separate massing there.
but overall, it's an improvement on just like
Yeah.
that.
What do you guys think of the second floor window and the like little pop-up roof above the front door?
I kind of feel like the window, to make the little pop-up roof, like the window needs to feel like it's pushing the roof up in a way. Because it's kind of hard to show, but
Yeah.
like it feels like any other window, but the roof's popping up.
Yeah.
Because
It's like a little eyebrow, but it doesn't, but it doesn't really,
I think it looks okay in
Mhm.
elevation, but in the 3D views, I think it looks a little like kind of tight in that
Mm.
corner.
Yeah.
Like there's maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 different like roof planes in that small area.
Mm. That's actually a really good point, because when I'm looking now at you're right, elevation, it's different. And then when you look at it in the 3D view, with that, I'm going to call it the eyebrow, that eyebrow above the window there. And then that corner condition, there's a lot going on there. It seems like, you've got the gables running into the other, I don't know if we can pull it up on the screen. Is it possible to pull up the renderings on the screen for the public?
It's the
North, it's the north.
The first rendering.
That for, yeah.
Yeah. Or were you running the rendering? Oh, yeah.
Well, they have them both of them, yeah, there, that's perfect. So yeah, at the corner condition there at that second level, it does look a little busy, right, with how the roofs are coming together. I'm not sure if it's the angle of the rendering, and it doesn't bother me on the elevation, but seeing it in this angle, it does look like that should be resolved maybe. I don't know.
It is a lot of like, edges coming together.
Yeah.
Closely.
Would it be possible to raise the roof to align with the roof that's like perpendicular?
That's a good, yeah. Let's see, what's that? What's in the word?
What is that pop-up dormer window too on the inside? Oh, it's the bathroom.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I like the design. That's the only thing that kind of jumped out at me.
I get it because it's the same, that corner condition, it's the same slope of the roof. It's consistent, so I understand why it's looking the way that it looks but they're trying to achieve the height of that second story at that front. I'm not sure if I'm being very, very clear, but at that front north facade, the furthest facade to the street, at the second story, that one, it's the roof, the slope of the roof is the same as the one that's perpendicular, but it just looks, it looks like it's just a little bit of an odd condition there. And actually looking at the second rendering in the site, you can kind of see it a little bit in more detail. I don't know if can we flip to the next page? I don't know if the next one shows the same rendering that we have in our packet. No, it doesn't. You can kind of see it there on that last one. Yeah, you can see that condition with the shadows right there at the corner. So I don't know. I don't know how to resolve that really, I guess is what I'm saying, but it does seem a little awkward, right? Yes, that's it. Yep. Yeah, it shows that corner condition up there with the roofs and how they're coming together. It's almost like one sitting on top of the other, right? That's kind of what it looks like. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? You think is that okay? I don't know.
I mean, I'd like to see a study that tries to resolve that issue.
Okay.
But I would say that I feel like it would be detrimental to take that window out or take out the little roof move, because I think those things are nice.
Yeah.
Like I agree with you all that there's like a little bit of a like three things coming together in a
Yeah.
very tight space.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I agree with that because that little detail is almost adds to appeal of the design, but you're right, but it's just the execution of it, I think, maybe needs to be refined. Maybe that's what it is. I'm not sure.
Yeah. That's why I was wondering about what it was relating to inside, because like, could you just move the window
Yeah.
over 2 feet, but it doesn't really necessarily work in the plan.
Oh, okay.
Because there's a shower, the blank wall to the right is a shower.
Oh, so that doesn't. I mean, all of this being said, I think the overall design is really nice.
Yeah.
So I don't want it to be misconstrued that I like it. I think it's done really elegantly and clean. But maybe looking at that roof area on the roof line at the second story would be good. And then the garage design itself, I know we talked about where it's going to be, but if it stays in that location, looking at the windows and that front facade there, right?
Yeah.
So those would probably be the recommendations.
And was it the north wall of the garage?
Oh, that's right. And that side wall,
The side wall facing the neighbor. Although
yeah.
I don't know if the neighbor could see it or not. So I guess what we're saying is continue it. Look at some of these design issues that we've talked about, and then sounds like there is already kind of a study about setbacks. And then maybe take a look at what a carport might look like so that that can be compared. Is that kind of where we're kind of landing?
Yeah, and I think for
Yes.
the carport, it could be as simple as just a site plan, just so that we can say that we've exhausted the options.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes sense.
All right, so that being the case, what is the,
Do we have to make a motion?
we make a motion?
Okay.
Okay,
It's gonna be tough.
sorry.
So I'm going to try to briefly summarize the considerations the board just mentioned. So you would be making a motion to continue the project. For the redesign considerations that you mentioned, I'm not going to go through those, but secondly, to provide the front setback study, which has been provided, but wasn't part of the application or the staff report packet. Providing a carport design option, whether it's just a site plan or possibly anything additional. And then lastly, additional information and consultation with our attorneys regarding the reasonable accommodation request.
Mhm.
Could
So-
the attorney maybe provide like a letter that we can
W-
review, or would they?
We can have them attend as well next time.
We'll see if we
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
we'll see if we can have them
request that.
attend or provide you something in writing.
That'd be great. And can I recommend too that they actually provide code references and they provide the law, like they actually, I know we saw, I saw what was given, but can we actually reference it back to the laws themselves and the sections of the laws would be really helpful to provide the actual language
We'll have them.
if they
review-
can.
Yeah, we'll have them review the staff report and provide any
Okay,
references.
okay, that's helpful.
So,
Thank
so
you.
it'll be those 4 things you'll be making a motion on. And then last thing I'd recommend you make a motion to continue the project to a later date. So that way we're not continuing to the next meeting and then we'll have to continue again.
Okay.
We'll continue to a later date. If that's okay with the applicant.
Do we want to ask them what date?
Just a future date to be determined.
So does that give them the freedom to, like, if they get everything together by the next meeting, does that give them the freedom to?
No,
be on
they
that?
can still present the next meeting. I just,
But if you continue to a date certain, then we don't need to notice it again. So if you want to continue to the next meeting, you could.
I guess I would ask, can
And it
you
could
guys
also
be
then
ready for the
continue
next
again.
meeting?
it's just,
If needed,
it-
yeah.
Yeah,
there's been past practice to continue to the next date, and then we're just constantly continuing the project. So we just want to make sure that it's not keeping on getting continued every single
Yeah.
date.
yeah,
So-
yeah. So I wouldn't want to continue it to the next one if they weren't.
Exactly.
but-
So I think
but if-
clarifying that
Yeah.
is, yeah. As long as they can agree to that.
Yeah, I can make the design changes by December. And we already have the setback study, and I could do the carport study by December.
Okay.
Okay. So then I think I'll ask for a motion to, to do all those things.
Yeah.
If somebody can remember all of that to kind of list it.
You want to go, James?
No, I'm not that well caffeinated.
Well, I can repeat and then one of you can first and second.
Okay.
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 So the board will be making a motion for the redesign considerations. Um, Also making a motion for the applicant to provide the front setback study, which they have already. For them to also provide a carport design option. And and then we'll have consultation with our city attorney for this item.
I'll first the motion.
I'll second the motion.
Right. Will staff take roll call then?
Board Member Martin,
Wait, did
Oh.
you say whether that was to a date certain, to the
Oh.
December meeting?
To the next, no, we didn't actually,
Okay.
but, so we'll specify the motion is to do that stuff at the December meeting or the next,
Continue to the December 5th
continue to the
meeting.
December 5th meeting, yeah. Okay, so,
Yeah, I'll first that.
I'll second that.
all right,
Board Member Martin,
Aye.
Board Member Hill,
Yes.
and Chair Nichols.
yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Yeah. All right, so that brings us to agenda item 5. We now move on to comments from the city council liaison.
Evening, staff, Mr. Chair, Board. I'll just go over the city items. I'll not discuss regional items, but last night at the council meeting, we had a couple items related to your board. It was items 9 and 10. We actually approved 2 Mills Act contracts. There was vigorous opposition from a member of the public, and then the council unanimously approved 5, but I made a motion to come back in 6 months to give us kind of an overview of how many Mills Act contracts we have outstanding there. I've been on the council 23 years. After maybe took 2 or 3 years, we started approving a few. There was a couple of times we had 5 or 6 in a meeting, nothing for 4 or 5 years in a couple. There's a lot of outstanding Mills Act contracts out there. And the issue, and I brought it up as the vigorous opposition from a member of the community, is these 2, the tax savings, which are great. We talked about the policy, preserving old structures, building up the community, tax revenue, it's positive. But these 2 properties, one in Oaklawn and the other was on Indiana, Oaklawn, just as you turn off Columbia on the west side of the street. So it was $5,000 a year lost income for the city, $15,000 total, so $20,000 a year they'll invest back in improvements in the property. But that goes for 10 years, that's 200,000, but it was 195,000. But the city, that's 50,000 lost in property taxes, because we're about a quarter in every dollar of property tax we get. And then the other one's about similar. So what I noticed in the staff report I brought up was it kind of, after that, just kind of continues on in perpetuity. And I said, have we ever, I know we had there was some commissioners from, I believe was Cultural Heritage to come and said, we should monitor this. Let's just monitor, like 15 years ago. I believe it was Robert Conti's with the U.S. Attorney's Office. And we started a program that, as you mentioned, staff turnover. And I don't know if you've ever monitored it. I asked staff, and they said they heard about a program, they were going to start it. But again, so I said, come back in 6 months. I'd like to know how many outstanding Mills Act contracts are out there, how much it's costing the city. Because again, when it was 20 years ago, the prices in South Pass, it wasn't 20,000 lost taxes. It was a few thousand. Remember, and now with price, the house like up 500%. So we'll come back in 6 months and look at that, and just something you may want to weigh in on. I don't know. And the other item that I think would be of interest to you, there was many last night, fire department tour. But this was, we approved an exclusive negotiating agreement with a developer for an affordable housing project at the theater site right there on El Centro and Mound, that old little theater that we rent out to a small company. So we looked at about 5, 6 proposals, and we like this group. I think they're called Related So-Called Development LLC. And we'll start that negotiation very soon. It's going to be 12 months or 18 months. But it looks like a senior affordable housing project of approximately 50 units. So we comply with RENA, trying to meet those RENA numbers. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, happy to answer, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, does the little theater go away as part of that?
Yeah, we're on a month-to-month basically with the theater, and that will go away. And we've notified them, they're aware of it.
You guys have any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah,
No,
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, we now move on to comments from our review board members. Are there any comments from the board? Nope.
None.
We now move on to comments from our subcommittees. We don't have any, so we can skip that. Okay, so thank you, board members. We are now moving on to comments from staff.
Hi. First of all, I just want to thank you for welcoming me here today to your meeting. I wanted to let you know about a project that I've been asked to work on. The council directed staff, I'm not sure at which meeting, but very recently, to look into the design review board in general about whether to continue to have a design review board, whether to change the code. And this would involve a zoning code change to reorganize the way design review or project review in general is done. And so that is ongoing, and we expect to bring it, I believe, to I think it's December 18th, the second council meeting, for a discussion to get more input with some analysis and to get some more input from the council about whether and how to move forward on that. So I just wanted to let you know that's where that is at.
All right, so now I guess it's time to adjourn to the regular design review board meeting scheduled for Thursday, December 5th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. Thank you.